Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Nathan Hurst. This is Before the Box Score. Let's talk about Missouri football on May the 28th in the year of our Lord 2024. Not a lot happening. Nathan Hurst, we're in summer. We're post Memorial Day. So how are you doing?
Doing great. I think the countdown is down to 95 days until Mizzou football kicks off. 94 days. Depending on what time zone you're in. We're getting there. We're on the downward trend. There are less days till Mizzou football starts than there were at the end of the Cotton Bowl. So I'm taking that as a positive.
There you go. Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, whatever you feel about transfer portal, NIL, double windows, stuff like that, at least it gives you something to interact with this sport. I remember in the dark days of the BCS, when the game would be played like January 2nd, and then there was nothing that happened for a full 9 months. Now you've got, the spring signing period, the spring transfer portal. You talk about NIL, those guys stay in there. There's still guys in the portal that could still end up in places. I know rosters are mostly finalized, but we're talking about this in May 28th instead of, February 28th. So for all of our, whatever your complaints are about it, at least it gives you something to talk about. And from a calendar standpoint, at least, we've made it through the darkness, right? The trees are getting a little lighter. You can start seeing a little opening. We're going to be talking about football. Even though there's not a lot to talk about, we can at least pull out a couple nits and pieces right here, especially stuff that pertains to Mizzou. And we'll start off with a bummer because we just got the news this afternoon that Isaac Thompson, the former blue chip safety from St. Louis University High School, in the 2022 recruiting class, he is medically retiring. I don't know if you all remember this, but when he was in his senior year at SLU, he injured his knee, and so he did not. I know he didn't finish the season. I don't know how far he got into it, but he had to have major surgery on his knee, and I think he did it again his freshman year. And it's just one of those things where you're a dynamic athlete and your own body betrays you. And he just could not get healthy, could not get through all the surgeries. And today he decided to officially hang up the sport that he loved and played for so long, which is a bummer for him, mostly. Also a little hit to Mizzou's safety depth. But condolences to Isaac. Well, Nathan Hurst, your first thoughts when you saw that message saying that he was medically retiring?
Yeah, it was just a big bummer. He was kind of a big what if. He was one of the top-rated players out of the state of Missouri when he came out of high school. I want to say Rivals had him at 4th or 5th ranked recruit in Missouri. He was certainly one of the top-rated players in the class in that class that Eli Drinkwitz brought in. Really athletic safety, really exciting 4-star. Played great, had a great, really strong junior year, which really shot him up the recruiting service boards. And you were talking about his injury in high school. That happened very early on in his senior season. So I'm not sure how many, if maybe 1 or 2 games that he played his senior year. I don't remember exactly, but it was very early on. Complete massive knee injury. I was hearing akin to a Henry Josie-like injury where his whole knee was just, and so finally gets back on the field after redshirting that freshman year, injured again immediately. And I don't know if it's the exact same knee or the other knee. I think it was the same knee, not 100%. But that then put him back another year recovery. And my guess is he got through spring practice this year, wasn't where he thought he could be or should be athletically. Didn't want to have to continue rehabbing because you never really know, where that's going to end up. Did he lose some athleticism just because the knee's not what it used to be when he was 18 years old? It's just a shame. I mean, he was a great athlete. He probably could have been, if he had been healthy, I would imagine he would have been competing for a starting job this year just because of the type of athlete that he was. Hard to say without him ever really seeing the field in any meaningful minutes. But he had that talent. He had the pedigree to do that. And it's just, we're never going to know. It's a bummer for him, first and foremost. Hopefully he's able to stick around and get his degree. But it's also a bummer for depth. Thankfully, safety is one of those positions where we've got four guys that were ahead of him on the depth chart already. And that could have been another factor into it where he just saw that, I'm grinding here. I'm not getting any higher up the depth chart. There's a Marvin Burks ahead of me that, is young and talented as well. And it just didn't make sense for him. So it hurts the depth a little bit, but we've got guys, we've got experienced guys, we've got young guys that are talented and have played a little bit as well in that position. So I don't think it'll hurt the team too much this upcoming year, but it's just a bummer.
It is. Yeah. Just as a comparison, this was the 22 high school recruiting class, which included, Luther Burden was technically Illinois, but he's a St. Louis kid. Kevin Coleman, who ended up at Jackson State, Tyson Ford, who ended up at Notre Dame, Marquise Graciel, DJ Westlake, who also signed with Mizzou in that class. Dominique Orange was right below Isaac Thompson, but even with the injury, even with, as you said, as early as it was, he was a 209th ranked player in the country. 15th at his position, and of course, 5th in the state of Missouri. So it was a lot of potential. That, again, you don't have a functional knee, and just the circumstances around it didn't make sense for him to keep going. So that sucks. And, for Isaac, I hope he finds something else. Like you said, get your degree. Obviously, that's going to be honored. Get that piece of paper that opens up opportunities. That's good. A lot of these, a lot of guys who get injured end up in the coaching ranks. One I can think of off the top of my head is Matt Campbell at Iowa State. He became a student assistant kind of early in his college career. And then he became a head coach, so like these are things that can happen. You try to take the negative and turn it into a positive. I don't know what's in store for him or what he wants to do. Obviously, it's still a pretty raw decision. I'm sure he came to it before he posted on all the social media today, but even then it's a tough situation. So hopefully he gets better first and foremost. He gets the knee repaired, and then he can turn his experiences with high school football and the opportunity he had at Mizzou in the college ranks into something that he wants to do, whatever that's going to be. So best of luck to Mr. Thompson. In better news, you want to talk about the transfer? Because we got another one. Eli Drinkwitz, he's a transfer king, man. Portal king. I think last show we even talked about, hey, what are some positions that we need some more depth? And linebacker has been one of those positions that we've talked about. Not that it's needed, but it would have been nice. And wouldn't you know it, that stinker, Eli Drinkwitz, goes out and finds not the perfect fit, but a pretty close to perfect fit in Khalil Jacobs. Why is he a perfect fit? Well, I'm glad you asked. Number one, he's a linebacker. You need a linebacker. Number two, he likes to play the havoc style of linebacker, which our linebackers love to play. Number three, he provides a viable number 4 spot for a position that we found out last year. You need a full 4 guys, even if you're running a 4-2-5, which features only 2 linebackers. You need 4 of them. The last point, the man played for Corey Batoon for many years. He knows how Coach Batoon calls a defense. He knows kind of the rhythm of the guy. I can't think of a single downfall here, Nathan Hurst. What were your thoughts when you saw that he was transferring to Mizzou?
I thought I was really excited. And one point that you didn't mention, he's got 2 years of eligibility.
There you go.
The other 3 guys that we're looking at having some serious playing time this year are done after this year. So he comes in, he's played 2 years under Batoon. He's got 2 more years to play under Batoon, unless, if he wants to go out there and play at an NFL level and get drafted at this year. I'm perfectly happy with that too. But most likely he will be back again next year as a senior and be the leader of the linebackers at that point, which is huge. But he provides that depth, that 4th guy, because otherwise we were looking at having 3 experienced player linebackers and then a really big drop off after that. We can talk about that in a little bit. Then we talk about linebackers in general, but for Jacob specifically, I mean, he's explosive. 8.5 tackles for loss last year. I love seeing that number. The 56 tackles, I mean, that's more than Chuck Hicks or Tristan Newsom had last year. Now, both of those weren't starters the full year, but both played plenty. Chuck Hicks had 53 and Newsom had 51. So they're all pretty similar there. But he was productive. He tackled guys behind the line of scrimmage. 3 forced fumbles for Jacobs last year as well. So the dude hits hard, knows where to hit to knock the ball loose. Not a little undersized, which is kind of the trend for at least for our Hicks and Newsom anyway. But that you kind of want a little lighter guy to if you're going to have one shooting the gap and getting in the backfield and be quick and fast. You're not going to have a big bruiser of a linebacker that's going to do that or be as effective at doing that necessarily. So those guys are going to be a little smaller. And hey, if he ends up playing some snaps at the star position, if Dalen Carnell, they want to move him around somewhere else or move him even back to a free safety position, if he ends up being better there, that's great too. He's obviously athletic enough to play. He was sought after. I mean, now at this point in the portal, you're kind of trying to take whatever you can get. So was he the number one linebacker in the portal this season? No, but there were other high caliber teams that wanted him on their roster. Alabama being one. He played for Kane Womack last year, and he played well enough that Womack wanted him on his defense, and we beat them out. Ole Miss wanted him, and Ole Miss has gotten just about every transfer that they wanted this year, except for this guy. And then there's several other Power 5 teams too that I'm losing off the top of my head, but this isn't just somebody that was he was picking between us and SEMO, right? There other SEC teams wanted this guy on their roster. We got him. He's gonna play for us. He's gonna play well. He's gonna play for 2 years, and really help not just the defense this year, but the depth down the road.
Yeah. So his listed playing height and weight at South Alabama was 6'2", 218. There's a guy on the current Mizzou roster who's 6'2", 218. His name is Dalen Carnell, like you said. They're basically the same size. Now, Dalen's a little bit bigger safety, and Khalil's probably a little smaller linebacker, but that's kind of what it is. And to your point, I mean, Tristan Newsom is also not, some heeking, giant behemoth of a man. He's 6'2", 222. As long as we're just reading off numbers with guys, Corey Flagg, 6 foot 230, Chuck Hicks, 6'1", 230. That's more booty, right? That's more SEC. And even then that's probably lighter than what some other SEC defenses deploy. So, going back to your wish list, let's bulk him up, add him to the list without losing the speed, please. But I think one of my favorite things about Khalil Jacobs is how he was used. He is not going to be looked to as a you have to start now piece. As with most transfers, you're not coming in here to sit on the bench, especially for a guy that just got done coaching you for 2 years. But even when he was with Corey Batoon, he was a rotational piece. South Alabama had some tremendous linebackers. They had some tremendous havoc-focused linebackers, and he would come in to spell them. So I was looking at the tape, and I looked at the stats. He played 421 snaps. So that's not nothing. Again, if you want a quick comparison, we had Chuck Hicks played 486, and Tristan Newsom played 271. So he was on the field quite a bit. Now, the thing about Khalil Jacobs is we talked about his havoc. He was not sent on blitzes all that often. A lot of times he was kind of the guy dropping back into coverage to cover for a safety that was blitzing, or cover the spot where your defensive lineman is stunting and the corner might be joining him, something like that. But when he was sent on blitzes, boy, I mean, there were only 40 of them, at least the ones that I counted. He had 40 rushes on the quarterback, which that's 27.5%. That's his pressure rate on that was 27.5%. So when he went, a quarter of the time he was chasing down a quarterback and moving that guy out of the pocket, which is huge. Not only that, if you want to compare 27.5%, Johnny Walker was at 8.9 pressure rate. Darius Robinson, who was just drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, 13.1%. He is more of a Dalen Carnell, who would get pressure with his rushes like 37% of the time. So not only in size but style, he and Dalen Carnell are very similar. On top of that, when he rushes, it's effective. He had 2.5 sacks on those 40 rushes, which is a 6.3% sack rate. Just letting you know, that's very good in college. That's very good. So he doesn't get sent a lot, but when he gets sent, he moves the quarterback and he gets a sack more than, your standard college football player. Again, I don't think he's starting. He's probably going to be a rotational piece. He probably just get, maybe even a situational piece. But man, if Batoon can harness that and use that in a defense that likes to play aggressive, this is a tool that you want to deploy, sporadically but effectively to kind of create that pressure. And I'm very excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, and one of the new things that Batum's bringing in this year, the Joker position. Now that's going to be primarily played by an edge player, a defensive end, a bigger player than Jacobs. But adding that element in there really can confuse the quarterback. Where is the pressure coming from? Is it going to come from a Darius Smith or a Johnny Walker Jr.? Are they gonna back off? And if they back off, does that mean that a Khalil Jacobs is going to be coming, with his tail on fire from the other side, where you double up, double up on the right edge with the other edge rushing with a linebacker coming in, and then they back off, and all of a sudden you're looking for pressure from Darius Smith, but oh no, it's coming from behind me. They came from the behind me, and it really gives a lot of options for Batum to have players like that can kind of shoot out of a cannon, but then not use them that way. Don't use them that way all the time, because then it becomes predictable. Move them around, move them here, move them there. Newsom's a guy, or sorry, not Newsom. Flag's a guy that's kind of done some similar things in his career as well. So both of those guys, we're not necessarily expecting them to start the game, but they're going to both play a lot of snaps, and they're both going to be able to be moved around in various spots, and just create hell for a quarterback. Really, that's going to be their job. Is that can they confuse things? Can they sneak around there and tackle a running back when he's trying to make that stretch play before it really gets going. Just make it hell for the offense, and then come out, take a breather, take 5 plays off while we got somebody else in there doing the same thing, then hop them back in. And really the idea, I think, is ultimately to be as interchangeable as you can among those 4 players. So if one guy goes down, turns an ankle, what have you, you still got 3 guys that are that can then still be a good three-man core, because they're all pretty similar. It's just in terms of size, in terms of skill set. I think Hicks might be a little bit more of less of a havocy guy, more of a fill the gap, tackle the running back as he's running, he's running where he's supposed, be where you're supposed to be type of a player.
Yeah.
But the other 3 certainly are the type that, just let him go, let him wreck shop.
Yeah. We're kind of talking about the linebacker. So let's get into it. If you're looking at the position now and you're saying, okay, the roster construction is complete. We're done. Close shop. This is what we have. It's good. This fills it out. And, we'd probably sit here and say that about anybody that they added, but truly, I mean, you look at this, it's a versatility of skill sets, but not a versatility of type, right? Like, think back, it used to be that back in my day, not that I missed this, you would have 3 linebackers. You had an inside guy, you had a strong side linebacker, and you had a weak side linebacker. And the weak side kind of, would play the passer, maybe rush the passer a little bit. Strong side would be more, kind of trying to fit the run. And then the inside guy is there calling the shots, lining everybody up, and being that thumper in the middle. You don't really need that thumper anymore, right? The game has evolved where it's a lot of speed, it's a lot of edge, and then you need to be able to do a lot of different things as a linebacker. You don't see, talking about, remembering some dudes, you don't see a Van Alexander, you don't see a Brock Christopher, you don't see an Andrew Wilson anymore, kind of those slower, heavier dudes that just get up there and thump you. Now, both linebackers, whether you're inside, outside, weak side, strong side, you have to be able to play pass lanes. You have to be able to rush the passer. So we don't really have that heavy hitter. Not that you need him. You don't have it. Again, you said, that's probably more Chuck Hicks, but even then, he's our leading tackle for loss guy from the linebacking core. He had 15 run stuffs. There are a couple of times when he'd be playing out of position because he's like, oh boy, I'm going to rush and I'm going to blow you up. And, which is good, but you have 4 guys who are aggressive. You don't really have any guy who's kind of sit back and let it come to you. Not that you always need that. So to your point, we can play 4. In theory, we could play all 4 of these guys, without seeing the tape, without seeing practice, without knowing their knowledge of the book. You could probably slot them in and not see any fallback. The same kind of effect that we had on defensive line the last 2 years, where you could just swap guys out and not really see any drop off in production. Here is my thing, though, because we know we've got these 3 guys who are going to be gone. That Will Norris, his time is up. I think it's either this year or the next year. But past that, you have Brayshawn Littlejohn, who is a red shirt coming into this year. You have Nicholas Rodriguez, who is a blue chipper out of Fort Lauderdale. You have Brian Huff, who's already on campus. He was a stud coming out of Arkansas. And you also have Jeremiah Beasley, who was the blue chip flip. I guess a flip. I mean, he was on campus at Ann Arbor and then transferred here. So whatever you want to call that. You have some really intriguing young options here. I'm not saying that any of these freshmen are good enough to crack the rotation. That would be borderline blasphemous. But you are losing 3 guys at the end of this year. And it'd be nice to see what you have in the freshmen. What are you thinking as far as we're looking at snap counts at the end of the year? How does it shake out for this entire unit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the 4 guys we've been talking about this whole time, they're going to be 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D in terms of snap counts. How that plays out, I mean, I'd imagine Hicks and Houston probably are a little bit higher just because they start the game. They'll probably start the game. But beyond that, it's hard to say. I mean, it comes down to who's going to show out in August as far as who proves that they can be on the field at any point in the season. Now, does that mean that they're going to be playing in the third quarter against Auburn or against Alabama? Probably not. But you would love to see a Brayshawn Littlejohn get 50 snaps this season playing linebacker. 15 of those against Murray State and 10 of those against Buffalo, and add them up in the non-con. Maybe there's a game that gets out of hand if South Carolina or Arkansas get him a few SEC snaps in those games as well. But I'd love to see him get 50 shots because he's going to be, outside of Jacobs next year, he's going to be the second most experienced linebacker of the group, and the only plays he's had have been on special teams last year as a redshirt freshman. Yeah. Or is he a redshirt freshman this year? I think he was a true freshman last year.
Yes.
But was able to redshirt. So he's a redshirt freshman this year. Hasn't actually seen the field as a linebacker, I'm pretty sure. So love to see him. And then I love to see one of those 3 true freshmen coming in. Beasley, Rodriguez, Huff. Not sure who that's going to be. That's going to be up to DJ Smith to figure out who looks like the best. Beasley might have just have a little step ahead, just being the blue chip talent, probably a little more talented coming out of high school than the other 2 guys. That said, Brian Huff was here in the spring, so he has a little bit of a leg up in terms of learning the new system. I don't care who it is, as long as some guy shows it. He shows and earns 30, 40, 50 snaps as well, just to get his beak wet playing in this defense, because next year that they're going to be it. Now, can we go back into the portal and get another 2 linebackers like we did this year? Yeah, definitely, probably will, to be honest. But you still need depth. You don't build depth only through the portal. That's impossible. So you have to develop these guys. You have to have at least 2 of the 5 that we talked about: Littlejohn, Beasley, Huff, Rodriguez. 2 of those 5 need to come into 2025 ready to play. Yep. Whether that's 20 snaps a game or 50 snaps a game, I don't know. But 2 of those 5 guys need to be ready to play next year, so that you have Jacobs, 2 of those guys, and then bring in a transfer if you need to. But they're not going to get on the field. God forbid that we are decimated by injuries. Those guys aren't going to be on the field for a whole lot. I don't think we want them on the field for a whole lot of snaps this season. But we need to get them some time. Yeah. Garbage time. Ideally, we're up 50-7 at halftime against Murray State, and just let them go. Something like that.
That's not going to happen. That's not how Eli Drinkwitz plays football. Yeah, that would be nice. Brian Huff was a 4-star for a while, and then he went from like a low 4-star to a 3-star in Rivals. I think he's still a 4-star on 247. Nick Rodriguez had a bit of a jump kind of halfway through his senior year. Point is like, all these guys were well regarded nationally kind of at some point in their senior year. So I feel really good, surprisingly good about the future of the linebacking core. But yeah, it's that bugaboo of Eli Drinkwitz, please play your young guys. And he does not do that. He doesn't. He's not a guy who piles on a ton of points and then lets the backups come in. And even if he does pile on the points, he usually keeps his starters in. So it's, I would love to see it. But as I'll tell anybody, Nick Bolton had to play special teams his freshman year. Nick Bolton's in the NFL. He's one of few Missouri Tigers who have scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Like, this is, everybody's got to earn their dues, pay their dues, earn their time as a special teamer, even if you got 4 shiny stars next to your name from some recruiting service. I'd like to think that Beasley and Rodriguez and Huff are good enough to warrant a look, but yeah, to your point, like, I don't know. Well, but I mean, you think back to Gary Pinkel teams, and they're really good. They're really good. Now, on defense, that was mostly from the defensive line, but we never really had standout linebackers or standout cornerbacks. Thinking back, I mean, Andrew Wilson, I mentioned him before. He was good. He was limited. He was never going to be in the NFL. I always thought Xavier Gooden was one of the most physical, athletic freaks I've ever stood next to. The dude was a Greek god. I think he either got drafted or he got undrafted free agent. He was in the NFL for a little bit. I know that.
Yeah, he was on the Titans for a little bit.
There you go. And he was good. He was really good at college, but he was never going to be an NFL guy. And again, Nick Bolton kind of snuck up on us. Sean Weatherspoon snuck up on us. They were overlooked guys from Texas. Kentrell Brothers, a tackling machine, Minnesota Viking. It was never like a guy who arrived on campus and then just dominated for multiple years at linebacker. The closest you could get is maybe a Spoon or a Bolton. And even then, they were not heralded coming in. And same for the cornerbacks. And now we're in the modern era. We are landing 4-star guys. And if we're not landing 4-star guys, we're landing guys who are well regarded and believe they can do well. Think of Ennis Rakestraw. Again, Eli Drinkwitz's first big win where he beat out Alabama, even though, there's 3 stars to his name on all the recruiting services. Everyone's like, oh yeah, this guy's good. This guy is very good. And he was, and he got drafted. So it's weird to have expectations for linebackers. I guess that's my punchline here. We haven't really had that a lot at Mizzou. I think Chad Bailey is one of the few blue chip linebackers that Mizzou's ever had. And he was good. Obviously, he was snake bitten and injured, but he was really good. But everything's kind of snuck up from the linebacking court. It's weird to have 2 blue chippers on the roster. I don't know what their potential is, but God, what do we do with the expectations in linebackers, Nathan Hurst? What am I supposed to do?
It's kind of strange because as you mentioned, all of our really good linebackers, because we put out some really good college linebackers, they've all been developmental players. And that's fine. Nick Bolton was a developmental player. He developed really well and faster, I think, than Barry Odom thought that he would. And he's one of the best linebackers in the NFL now. So it's nothing wrong with being a developmental linebacker if you get to if you get to where you need to be. I think both of these blue chip guys in terms of Huff and Beasley, they're still going to be developmental players if for no other reason than there's guys ahead of them right now. Does that in terms of guys with seniority, guys with experience, and Drinkwitz is always going to go with the guy with experience over a guy without experience, regardless of how talented allegedly that person is. The trick will be, can we keep these guys around long enough? Or can we convince them that they are developing, that they when they do see the field, whether that's this year, next year, 2026, that they'll be in a better place for their own careers, for their own development to see the field at that point. Looking at the 4 guys, Littlejohn, Beasley, Rodriguez, Huff, I hate to say it, at this current climate of college football, I would be shocked if all 4 of those guys were still on the roster at the end of next year.
Yeah.
Hopefully they are. Hopefully they love it. Hopefully they see a path to their own success here at Mizzou. But it's just hard to keep 4 young, talented players who aren't playing yet to all buy into that vision when they could easily go somewhere else and perhaps see the field sooner than they are now. Or, in the case of a Jacobs, they're not really going to be taking a step up, I don't think, like a Jacobs. He did see the field. He kind of earned that step up. Sure. But talking more like we had a couple players, linebackers transfer out this year, Damian Wilson, Carmicah Glass. They kind of just saw that it wasn't going to happen for him here.
No.
Now neither of those guys had the pedigree of a Beasley or a Huff. Those were three mid 3-star guys to begin with. So well, I don't know. Can't tell the future. Not sure all four of them will be there. But if we can hold on to three of them, and they're the three best of them, then I think the position will be in good hands here in a couple of years once they have a chance to develop and learn the system and kind of get their feet under them.
Yeah. And look, I mean, there's value to a depth piece. It's not great to see a Damian Wilson or a Carmike Glass or a Xavier Simmons leave, because you need those guys to practice against, and you need those guys to step up in the case of injury. I'm not saying it's a good thing to lose them. What I am saying is that Damian Wilson ended up at East Carolina, Carmike Glass ended up at Louisiana, and Xavier Simmons is at Charlotte. And those programs are not renowned for winning football games. Sorry. I mean, it's one's in the Sun Belt, two are in the American. Like there's an aspect of this where they didn't see the field, so there's not a whole lot of tape. Now, coaches send out their practice film, right? They blur out the plays and they just, I'll send it to whoever you want me to send it to, so they can see what you do. That's fine. Especially in the case when they're pushing you out. That's a different story. But it's not a lack of tape, it's a lack of game film. And it's like, well, what can you do? And so if you don't have game film and you only have practice film, there's only so much you can glean from that. So again, I'm not saying this is a 100% commentary on their ability. At the same time, if you lose a guy and he ends up at Charlotte, he wasn't playing here, and there's probably a reason he's at Charlotte, right? So you want to replace that with potential youth talent, that sort of thing. But to your point, holding on to all four guys is going to be very tough. Now, at the same time, you lose three, and maybe they stick around through the spring, and there's an opportunity where they see how they fit into the new defense heading into 25. They all buy in. You put them on a frozen pizza wrapper. Like, there's ways to do this, but you also have a finite amount of money, and you can't spend it all on your linebacking core. So, yeah, I don't know. But there's a lot of potential here, and it's nice that once again, we almost – I'll speak for myself. I almost fall asleep and tune out the whole Eli Drinkwitz has raised Missouri's recruiting profile because I just hear it over and over again. But seriously, Mizzou doesn't recruit 4-star linebackers and 4-star cornerbacks, and now we do, and that's great. So very interesting to see how the linebackers shake out as we get into this season. Final notes. Well, tangentially, my preview series has started. Please read it. I do stupid amount of work on it for like no reason. There's 3,300 plus words on Boston College if you're so inclined to read that. Plus I got the Buffalo preview up and the Murray State preview up, and I still maintain to this day that they're fun, but wow, it's a lot of words. Anyway, I talked about Boston College today, and specifically I talked about Jeff Hafley, who somehow beat Eli Drinkwitz in 2021 and is no longer in college football. He is now the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. Now, Jeff Hafley was always more of an NFL guy. He took a rehab stint at Ohio State because he kept playing for crappy NFL teams. But he was at Ohio State. He was a defensive coordinator there, turned that into the Boston College job. Beats Eli Drinkwitz in 2021. Immediately goes 3-9 the next year, ekes out 7-6 last year, and then just gets the heck out. The reason I'm bringing this up is because when Jeff Hafley left, he had a very bitchy exit interview that kind of made the rounds in social media. I'm sure you saw it, where he talked a little bit about the state of the modern college football game. And I'm just going to read this quote here. He told On3 Sports, quote, "Look, there's some really good people and some really good agents," he said. "And just like anything else, some really bad ones that are trying to take advantage of kids. And it's not right. It's not fair. There's kids that are leaving good academic schools with a semester or 2 semesters left where they're going to get a life-changing degree, and instead they're getting convinced to transfer. It's way bigger than making a few bucks right now. I get it. That's easier said than done. I'm all for it. Let's pay the players and give them some more money. I think it's all good, and I totally respect it. But we got to look at the degree aspect of this thing too." End quote. Sarcasm, emphasis, mine. The game has changed, Nathan Hurst. If the transfer portal wasn't that changed, if NIL wasn't that change, if unlimited transfers wasn't that change, then the House case will certainly be that change, and maybe something after that too. But my point is that there are two ways that college football coaches approached all of these changes that have happened in a very short amount of time. There's one that embraces it and tries to run with it and make the most of it. There's another who complains to the media about how bad things are and saber rattles for degrees from great schools. Jeff Hafley, here's the tip, man. If somebody complains about something, it's probably because they're bad at it. And Jeff Hafley was bad at retaining his players with NIL in the transfer portal. So, Nathan Hurst, I want you to be happy, glad, thankful that Eli Drinkwitz is who he is and is thriving in the modern college football game.
Absolutely. It was pretty prescient, I think, of whoever ended up making the final decision to hire Drinkwitz, be it Jim Sturck, be it the board of curators, be it a dark cabal of shady folks in the back rooms of Mizzou Arena making underhanded deals. I don't know who that was. Was there incense burned and pentagrams drawn on the floor? Whatever it was, they landed on the guy that it seems to be built perfectly for this modern system, the way that it is now. Now, is he built perfectly for the rest of time? I don't know. We don't know where that's going to go. But I can guarantee you he's having way more success at Mizzou now than he would have if he had this job when he took it over at the time Gary Pinkel took it over. Or honestly, when he took it over at the time that Barry Odom took over the program in 2015, completely different world in terms of how you attract athletes, how you keep athletes, and short of cheating his butt off, he was not going to have the same level of success that he can have legally now with NIL and soon to be with looks like we're going to be paying players directly from the schools as well with the recent settlement announcement with House. But he's got the personality. It seems like he likes to go and buy players legally, right? It's something that he enjoys. A lot of these old school coaches just seem to be like they kind of do it because they have to, and it's the only way to succeed. Nick Saban being one of them. You could tell he hated the way that he had to recruit the last 3-4 years of his career. Ultimately, it led to him retiring probably a couple of years earlier than he initially had planned on doing, just because he couldn't stand the way it was run anymore, because it wasn't the way it used to be. It wasn't the way that he had come up doing it. Is it better now or is it worse now? That's a pretty subjective. You could at least the kids are getting a cut now, and so I think in that sense it's certainly better. From a coaching standpoint, it's just very different. And he's the guy that he enjoys it. He loves to win, and he loves to win on the field. He loves to win off the field. He loves to tell people that he's beating them on the field, and he loves to tell people that he's beating them off the field. And sometimes that comes back to bite him in the ass a few times, and he's put his foot in his mouth. But also a lot of times it comes off and he looks pretty slick doing so as well. And he pisses off a lot of other SEC fans, which is great. Mizzou has been lacking in an identity in the SEC in a lot of ways for football, and we have one now. And it's kind of everyone hates Eli Drinkwitz, and it's because he's beating them. He's beating them on the field. He's beating them off the field, and he's rubbing their noses in it when he does it. And it's really entertaining. Now, is it going to be as entertaining if it starts to dry up down the road? No, it's not going to be as entertaining then. But he's thriving now, and that's the personality you have to have. You have to love doing that if you're going to put the hours in that it takes to recruit incoming freshmen, recruit the transfer portal, and recruit your own team back from the transfer portal on a constant basis. You have to love it to do it effectively, or you're going to be out like a Jeff Hafley who jumped as soon as he could for an NFL gig, or you're going to retire like a Nick Saban, or probably like a Dabo Swinney's going to fairly soon. I would not be shocked, because he's another guy that you could tell hates, loathes. He refuses to take transfers from other teams, and at the detriment to his own program. And that's not going to last. They're going if he doesn't retire, I think they're going to push him out sooner rather than later. While it's a thing that Drinkwitz jumped on from the jump, he's ahead of the curve in NIL. He's thriving in the portal. He's thriving with NIL, and he's adaptable. He has been ahead of the curve at every change that there's been in the last 5 years, and there's been a whole lot of changes in the last 5 years. He has always been on the forefront of those changes, leading legislation in the state, getting the NIL collective up and running and supporting that and getting the word out on that, reaching out, winning transfer recruiting battles. He's adapted at every turn, and that's the kind of guy you have to have in a landscape that is a tornado right now of change, and it's not going to calm down anytime soon.
No, I mean, you talked about Dabo Swinney. There were 4 teams last year, or in this transfer window, like the 2023 to 2024 transfer portal. There are 4 teams that did not take transfers: Army, Navy, Air Force, Clemson. Didn't take any transfers. 3 of those schools can't, by the way.
You need like a letter from a senator to transfer them.
You can transfer away, which, boy, I don't know how you get out of that service contract, but whatever. I don't, not my business, but yeah, they can't take transfers in, and neither can Clemson apparently. Okay. Ignore the law part. Ignore like the putting dudes on bags of chips and pizza part. True or false? Eli Drinkwitz would be recruiting like this, whether it was legal or not.
He would be recruiting better than Mizzou had recruited, whether it was legal or not. Is as good as he has been? I don't know. But he would improve. Our recruiting stature would be better than it was under Barry Odom. Not saying a whole lot. Better than under Gary Pinkel when at his high points, which still wasn't great. It would be better. I think the fact that he can do it above board, Mizzou has never been good at doing stuff under the table. They've tried a few times at various sports. They've gotten absolutely hammered every single time. Mm-hmm. So that's just not something that we've ever been great at. But because he can do it above board and be out in the open about it, that's what's really, I think, leading to the success. And maybe we would have had a good 2021 recruiting season and then immediately gotten hammered by the NCAA for one thing or another. That's just the way Mizzou works.
Could be. And like, how do I want to put this? I don't think cheating at recruiting is all that bad. I really don't. Anyone cries tampering, I'm just like, wah. That's part of it. I have so little concern about the rules of building a football team outside of like murdering somebody. Like, I don't care. Just get them in. This sport has been built on dirty, underhanded dealings for the entire time it's existed. Okay. The very first college football game was played between professionals that were hired on to beat the other team because they wanted a spectacle. So just don't get on your high horse about cheating and recruiting. I don't care. However, the NCAA cares, and the NCAA controls a lot of what we did. I remember, like, what was that, 2000, kind of like right during the shutdown, and the recruiting was like way better than we had ever seen. My first thought was, I wonder if that dude's cheating, because I knew Gary Pinkel wasn't, or Gary Pinkel would make sure he had his 4-star quarterback and like some really talented kids around him, but he was a developmental football coach through and through. Barry Odom was also not a cheater. Like, he was very much a Boy Scout who just, got his developmental players. And the second I saw this, I was like, man, this guy, I wonder if he's cheating or not in recruiting. And again, that's not a commentary on his character. I was always curious about it. And then things start opening up and we have a further recruiting explosion. And I'm just like, that's kind of who he is. He wants to win. He wants to talk, and he wants to, win by having the best players. I don't know if he would have done all of this. Obviously the forward facing stuff notwithstanding, I don't know if he would have done all of this, whether it was legal or not, but I'm just like, he comes across as a guy who's like recruiting first and foremost. And that's how he wants to win. But even beyond that, Jeff Hafley is a football coach, right? He wants to talk X's and O's with you. He does not want to get on the golf course and network and, ask people for money. And that's fine. I don't like asking people for money either, even if it was part of my job. It used to be that football coaches were either like super well connected or super like scheme heavy, right? Like they had some secret sauce on offense or defense that you wanted to bring in. So like think of, I guess, triple option guy, or like an air raid guy like Mike Leach, or, someone like a Jamie Chadwell, who's got the funky triple option with the shotgun spread. Like that used to be like a guy who could get a job. And then you have like legacy guys, like think Shane Beamer, whose dad was a football coach, and he grew up, and he's the only reason he knows everybody was because he knows everybody because he was a kid around all these people, and he knew their kids. And so he was really well connected, and he could get you into the job, and he could get you into the country clubs and raise the money and all that stuff. And that used to be the two types of coaches. And now I don't really think that's the case. I think you either have like the CEO pitch man, like Eli Drinkwitz, and I'm really not sure if any other style can really survive in this era. I mean, you either have to have excellent recruiters who can do that sort of thing. Think Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. He hated networking. He hated talking to boosters, but he had a Mike Elko who loved doing that stuff. And when Mike Elko was around, Texas A&M was good. And then Elko left and Texas A&M was bad. And now Mike Elko is the head coach of Texas A&M. So you either got to hire the guys who can do that sort of thing, or you got to be the guy who does the pitch man, raising money stuff, and then hire little mini coaches for their respective units. And I think, Mac Brown was kind of the prototype of this when he was at Texas. CEO coach, delegate, be the shaking hands, kissing babies guy. And now that just seems to be the prototype going forward. And I'm glad Eli Drinkwitz is that. But I don't know. I mean, can you even think of another type of coach who could thrive in this environment where NIL, portal, so much of it is off the field stuff and so little of it is actual football coaching?
Yeah, there's just too much to do for one man to do it. And it has a lot of that stuff, the shaking hands and kissing babies, that has to be the head guy doing that if it's going to be effective. There's only so many times you can delegate a rich alumni booster event, golf tournament to your defensive coordinator, who may or may not have the personality of dirt, before it just stops being effective and you start pushing and alienating people away. It's got to be the head guy.
And yeah, there are staffs who have a general manager who deals with personnel, right? Like they do the scouting of college players, they do the scouting of high school players. It's just a different game. And I'm very lucky that our guy is one who's adapted and can fit. Otherwise, we'd be looking for a new one very soon. So I think that's going to be our show. Again, not a lot of news, but a little bit of bad, a little bit of good, a little bit of stepping back and taking a look at stuff. It was a complete show. It was a complete day. I hope you liked it. Nathan Hurst, final parting shots. What would you like to leave the people before we get back to them in about 2 weeks?
Oh boy. Well, I'm headed to the beach next week, so hopefully I won't be too sunburned by the time we're back here in 2 weeks. Hopefully the nothing crazy happens while I'm out. So I'd be doing an emergency pod from the beautiful waters of Rockport, Texas. So the beaches smell like sewer, and the sewer smells like the beach, and it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful place to be, and that's where I'll be. But until then, I'm hopefully things stay nice and chill.
Yeah, I mean, we don't make any promises, but yeah, as a famous Rock M meme used to be, don't do illegal shit, right? Don't break the law, don't be in the news, just keep it chill. And that's what we're going to do. And that's going to be the show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. You can leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. Follow us on Twitter. I'm Matt H.E. Edwards. He's at Burst to Hurst. And of course, you can follow the Rock M flagship at Rock M Nation, and our podcasting outlet at Rock M Radio. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, M-I-Z.
Z-O-U.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.